Hi, I'm Cliff Mountner, and today I'm going to talk a little bit about the use of speed lights at a wedding, or should I say speed light. For the most part, I need one speed light for the entire wedding day. You might say to yourself, well, does he use the speed light much at a wedding? And the answer to that question is no. There's a big difference between quality of light and quantity of light. When the quantity of light isn't there, that's when I supplement things with my speed light. Today we're going to go through a couple things. I'm going to show you a little bit about what's in the bag. But first I want to explain just a few things on how I use the speed light. When I do not have a speed light on my camera, which is the majority of the day, I'm thinking about texture, dimension, and mood like I do with or without a speed light, but I'm using light that I've been able to acquire through windows and all types of different light sources. During the actual wedding day, I'm trying to maintain the integrity of the moment. Sometimes a speed light, people will kind of look, or it'll get their attention, and sometimes it's just not really the right thing to do. During a ceremony, well, I don't want to use a speed light during that portion of the day because I think it's a little bit obtrusive. When you see certain images, maybe some getting ready images, and you might think that there's a certain texture, and you might say to yourself, well, he used a speed light there. More than likely, I did not. Here's when I use my speed light. Oftentimes, the first time I'm going to use the speed light during the day is during the family photo session. I'm going to talk a little bit exactly how I do that, what formula to use. Another thing I'd like to mention is, just because we have these amazing cameras, I've got a D3S right over here, and I'm very comfortable shooting this puppy at 6400 or even higher if I have to. Just because we have these doesn't mean that we don't need to understand the use of a speed light. I have heard photographers sometimes say, hey, what'd you shoot that at? Well, I shot it at ISO 8 million at 1.4. Well, just because you can doesn't mean you should. If the light sucks, the light sucks. You're not going to correct bad light sometimes just by pumping up the ISO and opening up your aperture. Sometimes speed lights are necessary. I'm going to talk to you today about how I supplement my situations with a speed light. Let's talk about a little bit about what's in my bag. I bring a bunch of different gear. Besides my camera gear, this SB900, I bring two of those. I have a couple of different SB800 units. I use them both with the 5th battery pack. I also use them with a quantum module and a quantum battery pack. Oftentimes this is going to be sitting on top of a monopod. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about my light stick. Right now I've got an SB900 mounted on it. Okay, I've got a Pocket Wizard transceiver. All right, I've got the little string thingy here that comes with the Pocket Wizard, and I have it hooked onto here. It's nice and easy. You can use Velcro like I use with my my SB800, and you can Velcro the Pocket Wizard there. So there's different ways to do this. My battery power. This year I started using these PowerX batteries. These things are freaking amazing. This battery charger right here, all right, charges my batteries in about, under 2 hours, and I can get a full charge. I can use this SD9 pack. It takes 8 batteries, and it plugs right into the front of my SB900. And I'm telling you, I don't need to change batteries that entire wedding, or if I wanted to shoot another wedding on top of that, I wouldn't have to change batteries. Ever since I started using these PowerXs, I've really increased my battery power, and the longevity is pretty incredible. So those are just a few things that I bring. I bring 3 or 4 of these Pocket Wizards, maybe 4 speed lights to a wedding. What else do I have? Sometimes I use this little Sunpack Ready light, and it puts out about 20 watts. Sometimes I'll just supplement the scene a little bit. So even though it's not a speed light, sometimes it adds a little bit of light to a particular scene. I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about the theory behind what I do with flash and basically the theory behind flash. In my Essentials of Creativity class, I talked about exposure. I talked about exposure compensation. And I made the analogy, okay? Let's paint a scene for a second. Let's pretend that there was a big black bed sheet right in front of me. Let's pretend that I stuck my head right through this bed sheet. The way different metering modes work, okay, first you have TTL, you have A, which is auto aperture, all right, or auto. Auto, if you remember, there's a Vivitar 283 back in the day. This Vivitar 283 had a thyristor on the front of it. And basically what it did, it was a sensor that kind of sensed how far your subject was from the flash. When it put out enough power, it cut itself off. It was distance related, and it had everything to do with what aperture your lens was set at. At 5.6, you'd set that thyristor on yellow, and you would shoot. And it would give you 5.6 at whatever ISO it told you to be at, and you were golden. So that was really one of the first auto flashes. Today, with these units right here, this SB unit gives me the option of shooting in auto aperture, shooting in TTL, which is through the lens metering. Through the lens metering is completely based on exposure value. If I set my camera at 1/25 of a second at 5.6 at 400, okay, this speed light in a situation where I need some flash is going to put out enough power, assuming everything is 18% gray, of course. It's going to give me enough power to give me a proper exposure. That's what TTL is based on. That's how it works. I use different modes throughout the day. Later on today, we're going to talk about the use of manual flash, that M word. Manual flash, for some people, can be a little bit intimidating. Those little numbers, 1/1, 1/1, 1/2, 1/4, 1/8, 1/16, 1/32, 64, 128, those are power ratios. At 1/1 is putting out a full blast. A lot of light, okay, from this little unit. 1/128 is just a little teeny flash output. When do we use what in a given situation? We're going to talk about a little bit later. But let's get to on camera right now. And I'm going to demonstrate in a few minutes how I use it on camera, even though I don't use it on camera that often. Let's put this on here for now. Okay. Let's pretend I had that bed sheet in front of me, stuck my head through. I'm in TTL, all right? I'm in matrix meter. Matrix meter means it's taking an overall average of the exposure depending upon what's in your frame. Bed sheet is dark, and I'm sure you've all experienced this. Let's say you have men in black suits. Your meter is zeroed out completely, 0.0 exposure compensation. You take the picture, the flash goes off, what happens? The faces are too light. The flash put out too much power because it read the black material, that was what was mostly in the frame. The flash put out too much power, overexposed the face, and you say to yourself, oh crap, I just overexposed the face. So what do? Well, on this camera, I would take my exposure compensation button, press it in, and try to underexpose just a little bit. In other words, I'd take it, and I would bring the flash power down. This also works as a flash compensation button. So I'd push it, dial it down just a little bit, depending upon how dark the overall scene is and how significant the exposure variance is. If the face is way hot, I might dial this down a stop and 2/3, 2 stops. It all depends. So get used to what you think you're going to need and predict the scene. So I go ahead and I take the picture. It's too bright. Take my exposure compensation button, which also acts as my flash compensation button, slide it a little bit, go ahead and take the picture again. Most likely, it's going to be okay. Same situation applies. I stick my head through a white bed sheet. Perhaps you've taken a picture of a bride in a white gown and the groom had his jacket off, so it's white, and you take the picture. The entire scene is red as if there's a lot of light. Your meter says, hey, we got a lot of light here. Okay? So the flash doesn't put out very much power. What happens? The faces are too dark. So then I go to my flash compensation button. I would click it to the left. I go maybe plus 0.7, which is 2/3 of a stop, maybe plus 1.0, which is 1 full stop. And then the flash would kick out a little bit more power, and then I'd expose the faces properly. Now, why am I telling you all this? The reason is simple. Similar to how I explain exposure compensation without a flash. If the overall scene is darker than your potential subject, which might be a face, I want to take the flash compensation dial and bring it under just a little bit before I even take the picture. So I can look at a scene, I say to myself, you know what, there's a lot of dark jackets, I want to get those faces correctly exposed, so I'm going to take the dial, slide it under a little bit, get the picture, usually I'm correct. A quick glance at the LCD will allow me to judge the exposure value, and then I'll adjust from there. Usually I nail it on the first try. Okay? If the overall scene is brighter than what you're trying to shoot, then you might want to predict the scene before you take that picture, take the exposure comp or the flash comp dial, slide it, on this camera I slide it left, it brings me to the plus side of the compensation, and then it puts out a little bit more power and expose the face properly. So those two things, dialing it down, dialing the flash comp up. Ride the flash compensation dial when you're in TTL mode, predicting the scene before you take the picture. That's going to allow you to get more accurate exposures each and every single time when your flash is on your camera. Try it. I promise you it's going to allow you to get more accurate exposures. So you might have the question, when the hell does Cliff use a speed light? Well, when I need it. I need it for my family formals. Every once in a while, I'm going to need it for my processional or a recessional. Not that often, but if I need it, I know that it's there. I'll almost always have, during a processional or recessional, my 24-70 and an SB900 on camera, just in case I need a little bit of a speed light fill. Okay? When else do I use it? I'm definitely going to use it during the formal family photos unless I have some unbelievably amazing light on my subjects, and then I won't need a flash. But for the most part, I always use a speed light for my fill for my family photos. You know, the bride and groom, bride mom and dad, bride mom, dad groom, bride mom, dad groom, siblings, those pictures, and we're going to demonstrate that. We're going to go to a great place today called the Bellevue Hotel. It's one of my favorite places to shoot a wedding. And we're going to go into their ballroom, and I'm going to show you how we shoot a first dance, how we shoot blessings and toasts, parent dances, all that type of stuff, even though we don't have a mom or a dad today. I'm going to demonstrate how I photograph those elements of the wedding day. And of course, I'll even demonstrate how I shoot just the boring dancing pictures of, you know, it's a part of the day. It's a part of the day that I'm not entirely crazy about, but it's necessary. And that's when I usually use the flash on camera. But for the other elements, almost all of the other elements, it's flash off camera, manual flash. It may intimidate some of you, but I promise you, after this course, you will no longer be intimidated by manual flash. It's better, and here's why. When you're in manual, you choose everything. You choose your camera settings, you choose how much power you're outputting with your flash, and then if your flash to subject distance is maintained, every time that flash puts out a burst, it's going to put out the same burst. It's not dependent when it's in manual what your camera is set on. It's not dependent upon what's in your frame. the way TTL is. So if you learn to use manual flash, you're going to get consistent results every single time. Why? Because it's consistent, and we don't live in an 18% gray world. If we did, then we might as well use TTL every time, because it would give us consistent exposures every time. But unfortunately, at a wedding, we have dark suits, we have light dresses, and we get thrown off a little bit. That's why I choose not to use TTL a lot. I hope you learned something. So here we are. The reception's about to begin. The getting ready portion of the day is over, okay? We did our ceremony, did our family pictures, did our photos of the bride and groom. Cocktail hour, thank God, is over, because that's always fun. And here we are in the ballroom. The first thing that I'm looking for, especially if I'm working in a new ballroom, I know this ballroom very well, is I'm looking at the quality of the light. Well, the light in here right now is not very good, so I know automatically I'm going to need a speed light. There are times that I'll go without a speed light. As I mentioned earlier, most of the rooms that I work in have a tendency to be really well lit with decorative lighting. Pin spots, uplighting, there's cans on the floor, there's all kinds of decorative lighting going on, and a nice warm wash on the floor. Depending upon how warm that is, I'll think about whether I want to go available light or not, crank my ISO up when I can, make some pictures. I have gone available in this room before, but for the most part, I do need my speed light. So we've already determined that we need the speed light, and now I'm looking for different things. Where do I want to shoot some of the primary, quote, highlights of the day? What position do I want to get myself in when I'm shooting some of these things? Already, I'm seeing this amazing stage behind her. And this is Lisa, our lovely bride, and that's just such a great background to shoot into. Why? Well, it's a fairly deep throw, fairly long throw behind our subject, and I think it's going to just kind of fall off and just give me this beautiful out of focus area. The other thing that I'm looking at is what's to my sides. Well, you know what? I've got the balconies here, which, you know, isn't terrible. If I turn around, and I don't know if you can turn around here, I've got all these exit signs. And there are times that I work with videographers, and I work with some good ones, and I basically say to them, you know what? I'd like to shoot some of the, you know, the first dance and some of the other things this way. And they're right on the same page. They don't want to shoot into exit signs either. I know that we can remove them in Photoshop, but I'd rather get it right in camera. So what I want to start with now is I want to get a determination if I'm going to use a flash on camera at all, which I will for some of the dancing photos. I want to determine what my ambient light reading is. Well, I sort of feel it, and I don't really need to do that. I don't actually have to take a meter or a camera reading or anything like that. After a while, you're going to get a feel for exactly where you are. So right now, just for the sake of doing it, right now I'm, let's see. In fact, Jen, let's turn that light off just for a minute to let the people understand just how crappy the light is on her face. So the ambient light reading in this room right about now is, I'm at ISO 1000. You might say, well, why is he at 1000? Well, number one, I'm using a D3S. Number two, when using a flash, if I'm at a low ISO, okay, my flash is going to work harder to give me a proper exposure. The more I bring my exposure value up and sort of match the room a little bit, the less this is going to have to work. If I shot this thing at, a 2/50th at f/16, I'm going to burn this speed light out quite fast, no matter what ISO I'm on. But here's what I'm thinking right now. I'm at 1000, I'm at 2.8, and I'm at a 15th of a second. And right now I'm going to take the picture. I took it, and everything all around is way hot. She's properly exposed, but what's around me is a little bit overexposed. Those drapes behind there, I need to bring that level down. How am I going to do that? Well, we already know that what controls the ambient light is our shutter speed. All I'm going to do is go 2 stops under the ambient light reading. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to f4 at 1/30th of a second, because that's 2 stops under 1/15th at 2/8. So here I am, 1/30th at 4. Let me take the picture. And that's a lot better. That's a lot better. It's a lot better than that one, right? What happened in this frame, the frame before?
Too bright.
It's too bright in the background. You're exactly the same though, because this thing is just putting out the proper amount of light to give you a proper exposure. The shutter speed is what's controlling everything else around us, okay? The other thing is, I want to be 2 stops under the ambient light reading in order to get my subjects sharp. They stop the action with the shutter speed, okay? So whenever I have the flash on camera in this room, unless I have a video light, sometimes a videographer light will screw you up. Why? Well, I've just brought the ambient light level on Lisa up. So I have to compensate with a little faster shutter speed. So when that video light is off, I'm okay at 2 stops under the ambient light reading before that light went on. But once that light goes on, I'm going to need to compensate with my shutter speed. So anytime you may have seen a videographer light goes on, and then you look at your take, you look at your images afterwards, and you say to yourself, crap, there's movement in Lisa's face. The reason this happened was because you were not 2 stops under the ambient light reading on Lisa. The exposure value that was on Lisa and the exposure settings that you put on your camera were too close together. So general rule, 2 stops under the ambient light reading when using your speed light in here, and you'll stop the action. Okay, here we are. It's time for the first dance, okay? As you can see, the ballroom is obviously not set up for an actual reception. The Bellevue has been kind enough, again, to let us use this. Normally, there's going to be guests in the perimeter. Look, these guys have started dancing already. You can chill, it doesn't matter yet. But usually there's people lined up all around the perimeter, and there's lots of noise, bands playing, so on and so forth. My job right now is to capture the moments that's taking place between bride and groom during their first dance. What am I going to do? Well, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get the damn flash off the camera. That's first and foremost. Notice, this is a pocket wizard, not a flash. I use these pocket wizards because they tend not to fail me. I'm a big fan of the Nikon Creative Lighting System, but a lot of times, because of the line of sight issues, it's not going to work each and every time. The other thing that I do, I use these puppies in manual in terms of my flash. I use my flash in manual mode, okay? And then I don't have to worry about line of sight issues. If the videographer blocks us and the transmitter, okay, or the whatever the master is, can't see the other speed light, the receiver, the flash won't go off. So that's why I use pocket wizards, number one. You might also notice that I'm going to shoot my first dance with a 70-200. Why? I don't want to be here with a 24-70 right on top of them. It's not my dance. I want to give them their space. I want to give them as much space as possible. In fact, I might have this puppy racked out to 200, and I'm going to be quite a distance behind them, okay? Settings. We already determined that I want to be about 2 stops under the ambient light reading of this room. So what are my settings going to be? Well, I'm not going to shoot this at 2.8, by the way, because we established before that the ambient light reading was 1000 ISO, 15th of a second, you guys are cracking me up, 15th of a second at 2.8, okay? Well, what happens if Lisa is here a little bit? I'm at 2.8, I'm going to change my plane of focus. So I'm going to go to about 4, and that's generally what I use. I don't even know why they make these lenses past f4. I don't know, I don't get it. I only use f4, unless it's a family picture, and we'll talk about it another time. So right now I'm going to shoot this at about a 50th of a second or so at f4. A 50th of a second, oh my God, it's too slow. He's got a 200 millimeter lens. What about the rule where you have to shoot for every 1/1000th of a second for every millimeter that you're shooting? Well, no, it doesn't have to be that way. If I shot at a 200th of a second at f4, even at ISO 1000, my background is going to be too dark, and all I need to stop my action is about a 50th, maybe even a 60th, and I'm still going to get all this wonderful ambient light in my background for separation. If I speed the shutter up too much, again, it's going to go dark. I keep stressing this point because it is very relevant. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to introduce Nikki over here. Nikki's been working with me for a while. She's a great assistant, and we're sort of symbiotic. It is so important to be symbiotic with your assistant. Nikki, remember the first couple months we worked together, you're like, I'm not a mind reader. But after a while, I started just doing hand gestures, all right? And that was more, we got more on the same page. Because I can't sit there and say, move to your left, or squat down behind them, or any of this other stuff. So I just use simple hand gestures, and you'll get a feel for your assistant after probably just 3 or 4 weddings we got in tune. So it might not go that well the first time. Communicate with your assistant is important. The other thing that I'm going to think about right now is, what power am I going to put my speed light on? Where do I want to set it? I said earlier, I'm stealing this from Zach Arias. I think he's a great teacher of speed lights. Students ask me, where should I start? And the answer that he gives, I think is great. Start somewhere. It just so happens that I like to start at about 1/4 power. Okay, 1/4 power. The other thing that I'm going to do, you might say to yourself, well, why is he bouncing into a 30-foot ceiling? I'm not bouncing. No, I'm not taking this light, bouncing it up 50 feet and having it come back and hit my subject. That is not happening. What I am doing, I'm feathering the light. Instead of having it direct, because of this wonderful little device, the OmniBounce here, that comes with the SB800, all right, there's still going to be light emitted frontwards. It's still coming out. But not unlike a big softbox, okay? Let's say we have a big softbox here. Here's the front panel of it. If I'm pointing it right at Nikki, it's going to be a little bit harsher than if I feather it. And there's still going to be light coming out towards the side. It's the same principle here. So there's still going to be light coming this way. So it's not actually bounced, okay? So this is the way I like to shoot my first dance. 60 degrees up, starting at about 1/4 power, long lens, pocket wizard, 2 stops under the ambient light reading. That's my formula. Now, the only trick is to make the pictures. So let's see if we can do that. Here we go. You guys are going to just kind of do your thing. And the other question is going to be, because I'm using a long lens and I'm not using a flash on my camera, how the hell is he going to focus? Well, we talked about this a little bit earlier in the lesson, that I'm going to try to focus right on his collar, right where the white shirt meets his jacket. Oh, and then she wants to go ahead and cover it up, so she's going to, all right. So that's one area where I can focus, and in fact, that's probably my best bet at this point. I can probably also focus right where, right on Lisa's eye, there's enough contrast there, right where Lisa's hair meets her forehead, you know, somewhere in that area. And F4, which I'm at right now, is going to give me enough depth of field there. So here I am. I'm going to focus on them. Good. I'm going to take my first frame, and what do you know? I've nailed my exposure. I estimate, and I've learned over the course of experience, that Nikki needs to be about yay far from my subject. She knows she needs to be about yay far from my subject at 1/4 power. Now, if Nikki and my subject remain the same distance away from one another, I don't have to change a damn thing. If they move back that way, what is Nikki going to do? She's going to move back that way. If they move towards me, Nikki's going to move back just a little bit. So her job is extremely important so that she tries to stay equidistant from our subject. What does that allow me to do? I don't worry about that light at all. The other thing that I'll do, every once in a while, if Nikki can't move back, let's say there's a guest behind there. What am I going to do? If I feel as though I take a glance at my LCD and it's a little bit hot, well, I'm just going to play around with my settings here. I might close down my aperture just a little bit. I might take a quick glance at my panel back here and reduce my ISO. There are so many different ways to address this formula of exposure value. You can shake a stick at it. There's so many different ways to do it so you can accomplish accurate exposures. There's one other thing that I like to do, and that's, you know what, guys, let's get you just facing each other this way, okay. All right? What I'll have Nikki do, because most of it we were shooting 60 degrees up like that, believe it or not, I'm just going to have her go direct. I just have her do this. She's going to bring the stick up here like that, and then she's going to take this and go right behind them, okay? Go right behind them. She's going to squat down about so. The whole idea of this is a very, very old, simple technique. They're just going at it, looking right at each other. I'm going to squat down here. Good. Quick glance. Very nice. I'm just waiting for moments. Good. What I'm able to get is this gorgeous rim light that I'm sure they're going to put on the screen in just a second. Each and every time that they emote, they react, that's when I'm pressing the shutter. You might hear me press the shutter over and over and over again, but it's not quantity for quantity's sake. It's quantity for quality's sake. It's see the moment, grab the moment, work the situation, get a better moment from that situation. I might shoot 75 frames of the first dance. I might get 12 or 15 really fine images. But again, I'm not just banging it like a machine gun. I'm really trying to time it. Sometimes their expression is a little off, sometimes you nail the expression. So what have we done here? We've shot the first dance with a little 3/4 light at about, almost a 45-degree angle off to the side. Okay. We've moved to one side over here to capture some side light on Lisa's face or perhaps the groom's face. And then we've had our assistant, Nikki, squat down behind to get some texture on their faces. That little rim light, not unlike the light that we use outside. If you look at some other lessons on Kelby training, you'll see how I do that. What's next? I guess we got to go on to the blessings and toasts. We had our first dance, okay? Sometimes at a Jewish wedding, there's a horror right after that. You know, I do some of that flash on camera, some of that off. But then we come to some of the other highlights of the day. The blessings, the toasts. This is going to be, here, our maid of honor here is toasting. And what can we get? Let's tell you what. I don't mean to walk off camera here, but here's our SD9. This is our microphone. All right. Beautiful. By the way, this is not a shameless plug. This is something that I use at each and every wedding. This SD9 has changed the way I approach on-camera flash. I plug it right into my speed light, and I'm telling you something. I do not have to change batteries the entire evening. This thing is such a workhorse. So I love this thing. And I think I already mentioned the PowerX rechargeables. Tremendous battery life. Generally speaking, depending upon who you work with, sometimes you're going to have a DJ. All right? I work with bands, orchestras. Every once in a while I'll have a DJ. And when I do, we kind of butt heads a little bit because sometimes he likes to take the person giving the toast and put them behind our bride and groom. I don't want to do that. And at the very beginning, if you communicate with him or her, here's what you should probably say. And you might have your own way of doing it, might work for you, but what I don't want to do is put the toaster behind the couple, because if they're behind the couple the couple is probably going to be looking at their plate, kind of listening like this, while the other person behind there is talking. There's no eye-to-eye contact. There's no emotion being displayed back and forth. It's more like, they might laugh, but they're looking down while they do it. Either that, or they're doing this. They're looking up like that. So what I want to do, I want to have the toaster a fair distance from them. In this big ballroom, this is where they should be to begin with. Because if she's up here, the entire room is filled with people, and now the entire room can give her the attention she deserves. They can pay attention to her, and there can be eye contact. There's an action and a reaction. That action and reaction is what photographing the blessings and toasts are all about, primarily the toasts, okay? So what am I going to do? Well, we've got Nikki with the flash off the camera. Oh, look, what a shock. Cliff's got a 70-200 VR2 on here. Well, this lens is used quite a bit at my receptions. So, Nikki's going to hold the flash up there. I'm going to give it a little test. It's working. Okay. My settings. Well, we've already established that it's about a 40th or a 50th of a second at f4 at ISO 1000. But Nikki's a little bit further away from our toaster than she was from our bride and groom dancing. So what am I going to do? There's a couple things I can do. I can go to 2.8, which, there, I already did. And I'm probably going to bump up the ISO to about 1250 or so. Let's see if this gives us proper exposure. You could pretend to give a toast there, and I am never going to kneel down directly in front of my bride and groom blocking the toaster. It is completely inappropriate. That person is there for them, not me. So I'm going to squat down here, and you might notice that I have holes in a lot of my left knees, and there's a reason for it. Good. I'm going to see what we got here.
Congratulations, guys.
Good. That's just about perfect. I was a little bit hot, so I'm going to drop my ISO. I also could have increased my aperture. In other words, I could have made it a little bit smaller. So I could have gone to f4. So I just dropped my ISO to about 800, and now I know that it's going to be perfect. Ken and Barbie. So this absolutely looks fantastic. The other thing that it's doing, because it's off on an angle, it's giving me some texture, dimension, and mood, because it's more 3/4 lighting than flash from camera. So what we're doing here, we're going to go ahead, we're going to take a few frames of Sarah just giving her a little speech there. Blah, 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 blah. Good. Okay. We're getting some nice reactions, interaction there. Then, this is the cool part. What about the couple? Well, when I come over here, well, I can also shoot them from over here as well. But I'm going to get to the side. Where's the light? It's not moving. But what I am going to do, when the light was forward towards our toaster, okay, she's a lot closer to our bride and groom than she was the toaster. So if she did this to the bride and groom, I'd have to really start adjusting this exposure value, and I'd have to, lower my ISO, or I'd have to increase my aperture, and I don't want to do any of that. So what I do is I feather it backwards. Let's show everybody how I've done that. It's backwards. It's 60 degrees forwards to the toaster, 60 degrees backwards to the bride and groom, okay? And she's going to be right here. The other thing that it's doing, watch the angle that I'm getting. It's no longer 3/4. I'm going to step all the way over here, right about here. Good. And I'm going to get some of their reactions from the side. And guess what? My exposure value happens to be exact from forwards to the toaster and backwards to the bride and groom. That's pretty darn cool. So when she sees me squatting down to photograph them, she goes backwards. When she sees me trying to photograph the toaster, she points it forwards. She doesn't move. She's not distracting. And what am I doing? I'm trying to move almost, for lack of a better word, cat-like, so that I'm not being a disruption. The other thing that I'm not doing, I don't have this flash on my camera blasting away. I can get away with being a little bit more unnoticed. So I hope you learned something with this particular method, especially with the way Nikki is just modifying it forwards and backwards, forwards and backwards. The worst thing that's going to happen is that you bump up your ISO or bump it down a little bit, depending upon what the exposure value is going to be with that light falling on their face. There is one other thing that I can do with this situation. So we've already done the toaster. We've done reactions of the bride and groom. Okay. The other thing that I might do is I might get all the way over here. And I'd get a photograph of Sarah just doing her thing. We got it. Very, very good. So there are different ways to approach the toasts. We've got the flash off the camera, which is the most important thing. Okay? Can you shoot it with flash on camera? I wouldn't, but you can if you want to. What if you don't have an assistant? Well, guess what? One of the things that I have done, what if I took a clamp and placed it up on the balcony? Okay? I can do it. I can take a clamp and put two flashes up there. Have one on one channel facing her, one on another channel facing them, and then I'm still using one flash, but different ways. If you don't have an assistant, there's still things that you can do. A light stand for the first dance. I'm telling you, there are different ways to skin this cat. My way is not the right way. It's just something that's evolved over time, and it just tends to work for me, and I was glad to share it. It's the way to go for formal family photos. Why? As long as Nikki is the same approximate distance from my subject, I can go to Cleveland and take the picture, and I'm going to get consistent exposures each and every single time. Why? When my flash to subject distance doesn't change and my flash output doesn't change, it's going to be consistent every single frame. Assuming that I don't go boom, 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 I have to allow this flash to recycle, and I have a pretty good idea of how fast it recycles. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to come back here a little bit, and we're going to pretend right now, you guys get real close together, we're going to pretend this is just a regular family, okay? Maybe it's mom, dad, brother, sister, or in this case we got bride, groom, best man, maid of honor, okay? I'm going to come back here, and I'm actually going to come back even further. Why? Because I can. I can come back here, shoot them almost at 200 millimeters, okay? Compress the situation. It's going to look a lot better than if I went all the way up there with a 24 millimeter lens. Now, we're going to have Nikki right here, okay? You notice it's in a little bit of an angle. It's 45 degrees. So I'm going to get this nice light going across there. The reason I have it on an angle is because I want to create texture. I don't want to create dimension. So it's going to give me a good look. What am I doing with this camera? I've said several times, okay, that I want to take my ambient light reading, go a stop or two under. In this situation, a stop or two under is okay. All right. Fill in with the flash, and it's going to give me a nice natural look. So here I go. I'm going to go to about f4.5 because I'm doing group pictures. I could probably get away with f4, by the way, but I'm going to 4.5. Everyone here is basically on the same plane, okay? If he was back here and everything was staggered, I'd probably go to 5.6, but we can control the plane. We want everybody in focus. So, I'm at 4 or 5. Let's see. What's my settings? Well, I'm going to go to flash white balance. I like a nice warm photo. What's my setting? Okay. Well, tell you what. Let's try another background perhaps. And why doesn't everybody move over to this area right here? Let's try something else. That's good, Sarah. Come away from the background a little bit. Another thing that I want to try to do, I want to bring them as far away from the background as we can. All right, come away even more. There we go. Come back forward more. Good. There we go. Why am I doing that? Well, if they're too close to that background, because I'm only using one light, okay, I might get a shadow on the background. I'm bringing them away from there to avoid that shadow. A couple other little things. You might be saying, what happens if we start getting larger groups? That's a great and valid question. What I'm going to tell you is we start to modify the light by simply taking this stick. Right here is pretty good for 4 people, assuming I'm over there. And then as the group gets larger, I'm going to center this a little bit more. And if I had a group of about 10 people, this is sort of where Nikki would be. Now, is this the right way to do things? Absolutely not. There are absolutely better ways to do it. That little modifier on there, you might say, well, I use umbrellas, I use soft boxes. You're right, there's nothing wrong with that. I use 2 lights, I use a 2-to-1 ratio, I do this, I do that. You're all right. Everyone is right. If you have a method, great. If you're getting the flash or whatever light source you're using off the camera, you've won. That's the goal. But for me, speed is of the essence. That's what I'm trying to accomplish here. This is fast, this is simple, it works for me. That's why I'm sharing it. Let me come back, I'm gonna make a couple frames. Real close together, guys. I'm gonna go back as far as I can. Good. I like that background there. Nikki, come back just a little bit. There we go. Good. Good. That's working real nice. Pretty perfect. So just to go over it one more time, we're going to take an ambient light reading. Okay, speed the shutter up a little bit, because remember, the shutter is what controls the ambient light. Okay, I start somewhere. I like to start around 1/4 power. All right, I'm in open shade. That's another thing that I forgot to mention. I'm in open shade. Okay, it's a rainy day. I'm lucky we can use this open shaded area. Sometimes I'll use a shadow cast by trees to use that little bit open shade. For everything else, yes, you're right. I do like good harsh light. Lots of sun. The more sun, the better. But for family photos, these formal family pictures, they need to be done beautifully and they need to be done quickly. This method, I believe, is one particular way that you're going to get speed, accuracy, and they're going to look great. I hope you enjoyed this lesson. All right, so what did we learn today? This flash class was all about creating texture, dimension, and mood with one speed light. That's what we did. It's important to remember that if the quality of light is there and the quantity of light is there, don't use the speed light. But when the quantity and the quality of light is not available, that's when we have to understand how to supplement with the speed light. I don't care how fast your camera is. I don't care the fact that I can shoot at 6400 or ISO 8000 and I have my 85-14G. That's irrelevant. If the light sucks, the light sucks. We have to keep that in mind. And if it sucks, we have to take our speed light and we have to understand how to use it. So, getting the light off the camera, I can't stress that enough, is crucial. We create texture, dimension, and mood with off-camera light. What else did we go through? Well, as in any class I'm going to teach, compression is important. I use my 24-70 for certain things. When we were in the church, we did a processional and a recessional. When they get very close to me, and if I think I need that speed light, guess what? I'll lower the ISO, adjust my settings very quickly, and I'll fire away using some flash fill. We saw that during a reception. If I have the flash on camera, the formula is about 2 stops under the ambient light reading, use our flash to fill, okay? The same formula applies for when we use off-camera flash. As opposed to using TTL or A, which is automatic or auto aperture with my SB900, that's when I use it on camera in TTL or auto aperture. When it's off camera, my flash is in manual. I start at about 1/4 power and I keep it off camera. Where it goes depends upon how I want to create the texture, the dimension, and the mood. What I tend to do is keep my assistant in the same spot with the light. And then I move around to create the various texture. I also keep the exposure value about 2 stops or so under the ambient light reading. If I need to adjust my ambient light, I take my shutter speed dial, play with that a little bit. It's such a simple formula. Please don't be intimidated by off-camera manual flash.